Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And here we are. Oh my goodness, Q1 2025. And I am bringing you another special guest today as I'm getting to talk to Courtney Ramsey. Courtney Ramsey, well, she's a leadership development expert. She keynotes, she facilitates, she trains, she does it all. And you are going to get so much out of this episode today. She's also the 2024-25 president for NSA North Texas, and NSA stands for National Speakers Association. And I've gotten to know you, Courtney, for many years through our Dallas HR and HR Southwest, but I've really enjoyed getting to know you through NSA North Texas this way, and we're going to talk about that today. So, hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh my goodness. And I always like to talk about how we met, how I met my guests or when they came into my path. Some of them I hadn't met until I got on the show. Maybe I read a book, but for you, I remember meeting you through Dallas HR. You've spoke at HR Southwest. And then again, I get to connect with you at NSA North Texas. You're doing amazing work there. I can't wait to talk about that. But I do want to kind of get into this. I want to hear the Courtney Ramsey story. Like I know you, but I know there's some things I probably don't know about you. How in the world did you get into leadership development and all the things you do around that? Share that story.
So it's so funny. I mean, really, the leadership development part, I feel like it kind of came as an accident, but it was one of those happy accidents where you're like, oh, I found the lane I'm supposed to be in, but
Mm.
this is not really intentional. I actually started out in the corporate world, in corporate retail, right out of college. I was with Neiman Marcus's buying division. They
Mm.
were hiring lots of people out of college where you went into their buying program. And that was my first job. And I quickly realized, oh, that's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of financial forecasting. This is not the job for me. But I really enjoyed the people aspects of my job. And I ended up going back to school, getting an MBA and coming out and getting into more of the HR world. So I started out in
Mm.
college recruiting. I did some HR generalist work,
Mm.
also not for me.
Mm.
Woo. I'm just going to say, keep it real. There was a lot of wine drinking on the HR generalist days because there was just lots of things I couldn't change and I really wanted to change.
Yeah.
But then I had someone who really believed in my abilities and she tapped me on the shoulder and she asked if I wanted to be part of the training and development team. And this is back when I was at Zale Corporation, which is
Mm.
those jewelers you would find in the mall. But now
Mm.
they're part of the Signet Corporation. And that's where I found my love of training and development. And I did that in the corporate world for about 10 total years, maybe a little bit more, closer to 15. And
Mm.
then in 2017, I decided to go out on my own and
Oh
start
my
my own
goodness.
business.
Oh my goodness. Oh my good. There's so much here. And by the way, out of all the guests that I've interviewed over 200 high performers since I started the show. Most of them say that they are in the lane they're in, not from being purposeful, but it was an accident.
Right.
They started doing something and then they found their lane along that way.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think we had coffee and I think you had talked about how you actually started in HR and then moved over to the speaker world. I love that.
Right.
I want to get into that found your lane though, because here you are like, okay, so you've been on the corporate side and then you said, hey, I'm going to start my own company.
Hmm.
And many times we all get excited about, hey, a fresh, like, what is this going to look like? And you jump in and then you realize, like, realization hits, like it's tough. When was that, like, that moment that you said, hey, you know what? I love this. I found my lane and this is going to work. Were there moments or was there a moment for you?
That's a hard one because I think what the moment I realized I wanted to do it was when I was in a performance review. And
Mm.
my favorite boss I've ever had back at JCPenney, she was like, well, of course, we're succession planning you into my role when I retire. And that's so flattering to hear. But at the same time, I was like, hold on. And I even said in mid performance review, I'm like, that is so fantastic. And
Mm.
I don't think that's a path I want to pursue.
Mm.
And I told her that at that point, I had been considering going out on my own eventually, not that day, but
Mm.
eventually. to do what I was doing in training and development, but just doing it for different companies and different clients. And the reason I had that realization that that's a path I wanted to follow
Mm,
was the more I moved up the corporate ladder, managing
mhm,
other trainers versus doing the training, the less fun, I was having not as much fun and not as much
mm,
passion and purpose behind my job. And I realized I wanted to stay in front of audiences. I love training people. I love seeing the light bulbs come on. I love
mm,
creating new content for people. And the higher up the corporate ladder I went, the less I'd be able to do that.
mm.
So that's the moment I realized one day I'm going to do this on my own and we're going to try it out.
I love that. And so did you I always like to talk about mentors or sponsors that helped you along the way? You mentioned that earlier. You had some help. Were there some people that like encouraged you along the way? Because I think there's people listening right now. They're like, I love what I do, but man,
Right.
I maybe I want to like, I don't know, change lanes here or maybe accelerate, whatever that is. Who were some of the people maybe that helped you along your path, and maybe what's some of the things that they did that helped you that made them such a good mentor?
So one person that really comes to mind immediately, I don't know that I'd call him a mentor, but he was someone who showed me there was a path, right?
Hmm.
A mutual friend of ours, Michael Hoffman.
Yeah.
So Michael is a speaker as well. He does lots on leadership and influence and a lot on customer service. And we hired him back when I was at Zale to help out with some sales training that we did. And that was the first time I ever saw someone come in who was their own person. They worked for themselves. They had this IP that they could
Mm.
license to other corporations, not to mention speak for that corporation. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like you're doing what I do, but you're doing it for yourself and you have more freedom and autonomy but you're still getting to do exactly what I want to do. So that was the first time it hit me. That's actually a job. I could do that one day. So there's Michael for sure. And then just a few other people. I don't know that I'd call them mentors, but they are people who are almost acting like that board of directors,
Oh,
trusted
yeah. Yeah.
advisor role. Laura, who I was telling you about earlier, the supportive boss. I mean, in that performance review, she could have been like, "Oh, you're going to leave? Okay, well, let's start to phase you out now." She
Mm.
said she did nothing like that. She was like, "Okay, well, if this is what you want. I want to support you. Let's work through it together. So we do the right thing for the business, but we also do the right thing for you." And she was just someone who I could always speak to freely, and I
Mm.
knew I would get her feedback and her thoughts and ideas in a way that was supportive to me, but also the right thing for the business. And
Yeah.
then just a couple other people here and there that just really act as supportive people you can always turn to. I just really love so many people I've met throughout the years.
I think it's so important that we have people around us, right? The people that energize us and light fire under us and give us that inspiration to just maybe even see the opportunities ahead. Michael Hoffman, yes, I've seen Michael Hoffman perform. He's amazing. I love that.
It is. It
And
is.
he had a quote one time. I remember it stuck to me, and he said, if you really want to accelerate, this wasn't the exact quote, but he's talking about if you really want to accelerate, whatever it is, association, the business you're in, you need to go out and buy someone a cup of coffee and meet with them and talk to them
Yeah.
about what they do and they can help you get better. I love that. Well, I mentioned at the top of the show, you are a leadership development expert. You go out and you talk to, you speak at conferences, you talk to different corporations. What is it? Talk about what does that mean?
I'm one of those people that really feels like leaders, for the most part, are not born, they are made.
Mm,
And so I really think that if you were going to be a good leader, the vast majority of us do need to build the skill of being a leader. So I feel like I am someone, and trust me, there's many leadership development experts and thought
mm,
leaders, all those three, right?
mm.
I feel like I am someone who can come in and help someone go from being a fantastic individual contributor to giving them now the skills they would need to lead a team of individual
Mm,
contributors. Because one thing I've noticed, I kind of call it the superhero effect. When you are an amazing individual contributor, you're used to doing everything on your own. This is
mm,
actually a trap that I fell into. I was my boss's go to. I was the one you would call when the hard stuff needed to get done on a tight timeline. When you needed it done well, you would call Courtney. Well, I got used to working by myself and doing everything myself and being resourceful, and that's fantastic. But then you get promoted to a leadership role and you realize that's no longer your
mm,
job. And if you try to do everything yourself, and if you don't guide people and help people and truly act as a team to get results done through them, you're not doing your job as a leader.
Mm.
So I did not have an easy transition when I made that jump. And it kind of became a mission for me to want to help other people have an easier time at that. Or at least once they get into that role, give them the skills they need to be successful. So for
Yeah.
me, it's all about that. Leadership development for me is giving someone the skills and the knowledge they need to be successful as a leader of a team.
The challenge, though, too, is finding the right people in the organization that want to skill up, want to be that leader. A lot of times it's those people that are really quiet and not really say anything that are really have incredible potential. I don't know, for those listening, they're like, hey, I have this great team. I'm trying to figure out, where I might start in like developing people. I mean, obviously they could call Courtney, and she can help you with that. I don't know, give maybe the listeners maybe a couple of tips on, I don't know, things to look for, because some people don't want to be a leader. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. Or sometimes I would say people want to be leaders for the wrong reasons.
Mm,
They look at it as the only way to grow. Well, the
yeah.
only way I'm going to get a higher title and a bigger paycheck is if I take on this leadership role, even though that's not really what fires
Mm,
me up. So sometimes we have that happening too. Your question about what to look for is an interesting one because I think sometimes we can look for things, but I'm not sure it makes the most sense because we make a lot of assumptions.
mm,
A lot of times those assumptions are wrong.
mm,
So instead of starting with what to look for, I think I would recommend starting with career conversations
mm,
with your people and sitting down with each one and saying, what is it that you really love doing? Like when this is on your to-do list in a day, you're like, yes, I
mm.
get to do that versus sounds horrible, right? Because you want to
Mm,
start finding the things these people naturally gravitate towards.
mm,
And then from there, you can start finding out again about their aspirations. What do they want to do in the future? How do they see their career path going? Because sometimes I just find that when we try to sit back and observe and look for certain things in certain people, we might get it right, but we might not. So
yeah.
I would start with the conversation and just ask the questions outright. Now, if you were to nail me down and say, Courtney, give me at least two things to look for, someone who truly has emotional intelligence.
Mm,
That is such a big deal now with leadership. If you don't have
mhm.
some degree of emotional intelligence, or even if you don't, but you're willing to work on it, that's a good
Yeah.
thing too.
Yeah.
Someone who can understand how to manage their own emotions, self-regulate. They're not the people who, oh, Courtney's having a bad day. You don't want to talk to Courtney today. No one wants to work for a leader like that. It shouldn't
Mm,
matter what kind of day I'm having. I should never bite off your head or be the
mm,
day where you can't approach me.
yeah.
Someone who also has the ability to influence other people. And usually that's because they have great relationships.
I
So that's the
love
second
that.
thing I would look for. Someone who is a relationship builder,
Mm,
who understands the importance of having relationships. And even if they're not like the most outgoing, extroverted people, they have a quiet way about them where you know they are well liked and they have
mm.
people on their side.
I love that. I love the career conversations, by the way, because a lot of times we have a lot of conversations, but we're really not having career conversations. These conversations are more about, hey, here's your quality scores. Here's what we need to do to get those up,
Exactly.
right? I love that. Hey, I want to talk about like what you like to talk about when it comes to training, facilitating, when you do your keynotes. Is there a common theme that you like to talk about? And by the way, I'm going to put all your information in the show notes. I know CourtneyRamsey.com. You can find a lot of information there, but let's talk about your speaking for a few minutes. What do you like to talk about?
Well, we kind of just touched on it. A big
Okay.
part of what I really feel, especially new leaders, are missing is they don't necessarily understand that as their leadership job is coming into play,
Mm-hmm.
they need to focus more on communication and
Okay.
relationships.
Hmm.
So those are the two topics I gravitate towards the most. Communication in terms of how you show up, maybe what your natural preference is. I do a lot around DISC and Enneagram and things like
Hmm.
that. And then I really enjoy having the basic skills, teaching people how to have those career conversations we were talking about, how to have tough conversations, maybe around
Hmm.
conflict or performance management, how to delegate properly, how to write a performance review, how to give a presentation. So presentation skills, I love talking
Mm,
about that too. All those things where maybe we take for granted people just automatically know, they
mm,
don't. They really don't. So the communication's a big part of it. And then I really like to help people at the very beginning understand again, your job has shifted. You are
mm,
no longer the hero of your team. Your job is kind of like the Nick Fury of the Avengers.
mm.
Your job is like behind the scenes more to help these superheroes be the very best they can be. So that comes down to relationships. And if you're
Yeah,
not a natural relationship builder, I like to give people tips to take on that because it's not a natural skill for a lot of
yeah,
people. It's actually not a natural skill for me, but you can do it if you're intentional.
yeah. That is so good. I love that. You know, I have a funny disc story. Years ago, I was in a training, and during that time, I was chairman of the board
Mhm.
and for this organization. And on my board, I had a vice president of HR, high performer, who never spoke at the board meetings. And I always thought, do you really care?
Yeah.
It was just one of those things I just didn't understand. And so we went through this training. And what I realized, I'm a high I in that case. I love the relationship, the interaction, all of that. And he was a C, and he was very analytical. He needed information. And what I didn't realize is after we went through that process, I learned that unless I give him the data, he
Yeah.
just didn't get it. And I
Uh,
we became so close after that. So it's amazing when you talk about when you just said Enneagram, DISC, and different tools. When you give people tools, they
mhm.
can it can move the needle in ways you don't even wouldn't even expect. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that? So when it
I
comes to
do,
tools and things like
especially
that?
tools that are good for self-awareness.
Mm,
I think it's so funny. Like sometimes I remember being in JC Penney and someone telling me, I really need you to help mentor this person. She's just very unaware. She's not self-aware at all. And
mm.
it's like, do people think you're going to wake up at 3 in the morning and have this light bulb moment of, I should do this differently? I'm more self-aware now. No, it's because people receive coaching and feedback, or sometimes assessments and things that tell you where you're strong and where you have opportunities. That's the only way to become self-aware. So if I love assessments for that specific point, it really helps with self-awareness, which means now you know what you need to change, what you need to build on.
Yeah. So you also mentioned when the show started, you also do keynotes and you do training facilitation. What do you like doing the most? I'm curious.
The keynote that I love giving the most is all around how to have tough conversations.
Okay.
I really feel like it is the one skill that could change this world if we all just learn how to at least
Mm,
do that better.
mm,
So I love, I have a keynote about tough conversations and how you can do that well. And that's probably the biggest one I love to do. And then I really do love doing things around DISC and Enneagram and things like
mm,
that because, like you said, everyone loves an assessment, and there's always so much value around that. The other thing that sounds kind of silly, and sometimes I get myself into trouble for doing this, is I really like to do things that are more custom for my client. A lot of
oh,
trainers don't do that. They say,
mm,
these are my 10 classes, these are my 5 classes, this is what I have, take it or leave
mm-hmm,
it, right?
mm,
My background being in corporate learning and development means sometimes I would be approached with a training problem that wasn't really a training problem. It was
mm,
maybe a motivation or a will issue or a
mm,
systems and processes issue.
mm,
I love helping my clients realize sometimes that the thing they think is a problem is really a symptom of the bigger problem,
mm.
and really helping them understand what they can do to fix it versus throwing some training at it and just hoping it fixes the problem. That's great for my job security, but that's not
Yeah.
necessarily delivering true value and true results.
I mean, I love that. But when you talk about custom, all of a sudden what came to my mind was, oh man, that's going to take more time.
It does.
But
It does.
you know where they're coming from so that you understand that. I love that. I do want to dive in here real quick to the NSA North Texas. You are a volunteer leader. Today you serve as the president, which is fantastic. You're doing a great job. But I always, and it seems to me that high performers have this common thread. They volunteer, they get involved in their organizations, but they don't have as much. I mean, they are working, what, 40, 60 hours a week, and then you start volunteering another 40 to 60 hours a week, and you're out of time.
Yes.
What's it been like being part of NSA North Texas and serving as president? What drove you to do that?
Well, let's start with what it's like. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie to you, and I think it's such a privilege to serve. I mean, the
Yeah.
reason I'm here is because essentially someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, "We think
Mm,
you'd be good at this. Would you be willing to do it?"
mm,
I had to really think about it and ponder it for quite a while before I said yes. Because I knew, first, especially since for our organization, you're not just saying yes to a 1 year term, you're saying yes to a 4 year term because we have a
mm,
whole presidential lineup and succession plan.
mm-hmm.
And you don't really know where your business is going to be when you say yes to this because you still have
Mm,
basically 2 years before you get to be president, right? A lot can change in 2 years.
mm,
And I would say that's what happened to me. I said yes to this in around 2021, 22-ish. And it didn't really take over until 24-ish. And here we are. My business is dramatically different. So to your point, it's hard to juggle
yeah.
because this is a volunteer role. This
Yeah.
is one of those things you take on because you know it needs to be done and you
Mm,
care.
mm,
But you also realize, just like leaders in the corporate world or entrepreneurs who are running their own businesses with small teams, you realize you can't do it all.
yeah.
And you realize two things. You have to have a fantastic team who can do their
Mm,
roles, and you have to have the trust in them to let them do their roles,
mm,
even if it's not the way maybe you would do it. And you have to also realize that not everything is going to get done. So you have to get really clear on what the priorities are, be okay with taking small forward and not beating yourself up when you didn't accomplish this grandiose plan you had in the back of your mind
yeah.
before you even knew what you were truly stepping into. So give yourself some grace, I guess is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
I
And
love
I think
that.
that applies for real leaders too. You're not going to come walk in and change the world overnight. You're just
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But you got to give yourself some grace and really prioritize what you do want to do.
I don't know if you know this or not, but I come from a bowling family. And so I bowled competitively for a long time.
I
And I
did
was
not know
out,
this.
I'm filming a kind of a storyboard, and I put bowling in it, and I went and bowled the other day. And in bowling, 12 strikes is a perfect 300 game. And I missed on the seventh frame. So I had 11 out of 12 strikes. But on that seventh frame is what I kept looking at. And I think to your point, many times we're doing so much good. We're doing so much good, but we have our eye on that one thing. Like when you're doing, when you speak to a group and you have 50 great reviews, and that one person said, I didn't like her dress or
Oh
this
my gosh.
coat,
Or I just didn't
or
like her topic. I mean, you can badmouth my dress all you want, but if you say I didn't provide value for you, I'm like, oh no.
it is the word. So I love how how you shared that. What makes, I don't know, what makes a good speaker or keynote when someone's looking for a speaker? What are
Mhm.
typically something they should be looking for that I don't know, just from your experience that might help them identify the right person?
It kind of depends on your audience. I mean, I will tell you, I think for a meeting planner or a professional who's in charge of that, like, what is the end result you're going for? And
Mm,
I use that same approach when I'm designing training solutions for my clients. What are we going for? What's the end result?
mm,
What are we trying to
I love
achieve?
that.
And then think of it, who do I need to get that end result? Sometimes you might need a true expert who has a PhD in that thing, and
Yeah.
they might not be the most engaging speaker in terms of their stage presence, but my gosh, they are bringing the content, and
Mm,
that's who you need for a very technical audience. Sometimes you want someone who is all entertainment focused with a little bit of a storytelling motivational component because that's what
mm,
your team needs right now.
mm,
So really think about your team
mm,
first, but I will also say the one thing I would tell everyone is do not select a speaker based solely off of the video you see on
mm,
someone's website.
mm,
I would have a meeting with them just like this
mm,
because you can really tell if someone's energy is what you is legit, I guess you could say, or that video might have been some smoke and mirrors because there's
mm,
some good smoke and mirrors out there. And then look for social proof too. Look for people who have lots of reviews and testimonials on their website,
mm,
or you can even have people's names attached to it. Like Bruce Waller said, Courtney
mm,
Ramsey was blah, 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 right? Like
mm.
you want that social proof and you want to have a meeting like this with them where you can truly see if the energy is right for you and your team.
I love that. There's a lot of people that are listening right now that are planning their corporate meetings, their corporate conferences, their association conferences.
Absolutely.
And it's always good to kind of like just give some perspective around, hey, what should we be looking for? And I love how you framed it up as well. It depends on who the audience is. That's great. Hey, let me ask you this. Somebody that I don't know, they're listening and they're like, hey, I'd like to get more involved in NSA North Texas. Like, who should be involved in NSA North Texas? Who should become a member? Any thoughts around that?
Really, at this point, we are looking for people who want to make their living or some part of their living using the spoken word. So you might be a traditional keynote speaker, trainer, facilitator, and that's fantastic.
Hmm.
You might be doing kind of like what we're doing now. Maybe your entire livelihood is a podcast. Maybe you're an influencer and you have your own social media channels, and that's how you monetize content. Really, we're looking for people who want to become better speakers
Hmm.
and build a better business around that. So I would say the vast majority of the people you're going to find in our organization right now are probably on the traditional route. They want to do conferences, associations,
Hmm.
corporations, things like that. And we're definitely expanding our reach out to non-traditional ways of speaking as well. We love everyone. We're also welcoming, vendors and everything too. You can't come in and necessarily sell unless you're a sponsor for us, but we understand that sometimes if you're in the speaking industry, NSA North Texas could be a good fit for you too.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to check out NSA North Texas. You can definitely do that. What would you, I don't know. There's some people listening right now that, we've talked a lot about, kind of how you found your lane and what you're doing today. But for somebody listening, I don't know, they're not sure. They
Mhm,
want to they want to venture out. They want to do some more speaking. They're not
mhm.
sure if they want to get involved in it. As I say, are there's maybe a couple of tips that you might give someone to become a better, let's say, a better communicator?
In general, I would say find a freebie disc assessment online. They're everywhere. You can find
Hmm.
a knockoff version of a disc assessment, even if you
Yeah.
didn't want to take the real one. Because you really, if you've never taken that before, you do need to understand where your natural behavior
Hmm.
style lies. Disc
Hmm.
is not just about communication, it's about your behaviors in general. But sometimes
Yeah.
seeing how others perceive you or how you're perceiving yourself, even because it is a self assessment, that can be really helpful to being a better communicator. Just again, more self awareness. The other thing I would do is start asking for feedback. And that
Hmm.
is so hard to do because if you're like me, kind of like, but what if I get bad feedback? And I like to say, if you don't know, you can't grow and you
Hmm.
have to know. So find someone that you really trust and will be nice to you. I would start there. But then I want you to get brave and I want you to find someone on the opposite end of that spectrum, maybe someone you don't think cares for you all that much, or you're unsure of that relationship, and
Hmm.
ask them for some feedback on something specific around your communication too. Not only is that going to give you some really good feedback, but it's actually going to help you build that relationship.
Hmm. This has been so good. Okay, so I wrote down feedback. And by the way, I put that in my first book. Feedback is a gift.
It
It
is.
truly is. And then I wrote down what you don't know, you can't grow.
Yes. You don't know you
That
can't
is
grow.
so good. Oh my gosh. And then be brave.
Be brave.
Be
Have
brave.
to. You got to have that. You have to find that courage to do it.
Mm.
And that's
So,
hard too, because
so yeah,
everything in you will be holding you back.
yeah. How do people find courage? Like those that need that courage, like how do they find it?
One thing that I had to do just even when I quit my corporate job, I mean, I left a very nice paying job. At the time, I was working for Sephora inside JCPenney. There were lots of great perks there. But I asked myself, I try to give myself that perspective shift of, am I going to regret this if I
Hmm.
don't do it? And I knew that if I was to not try going out on my own, I would one day regret it. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in 10 years, but one day I would regret it.
Hmm.
So I asked myself, would I regret it? And
Hmm.
then I asked myself, what's the worst that could happen?
Hmm.
Because honestly, if I would have gone out and it wouldn't have worked, I told myself, I used to wait tables at the Cheesecake Factory. I can go back there. That was some darn good money at the Cheesecake Factory. It's easy to drive for Uber
Yeah,
and Lyft nowadays. I could do that if I needed to make ends work. I feel
yeah,
bad for people in my car because I'm not a good
yeah.
driver, but I
I
could do
love
it,
that.
right? I
I
could
love
drop
that.
off DoorDash. So ask yourself these two questions. Am I going to regret it if I don't do this? And what's the worst that could happen? And that will help you at least find maybe that little bit of courage you need to just try it out.
I love that. And then once you get moving along, you can do like Courtney and you can take your CSP and be a certified speaking professional.
Yes.
Hey, what was that like? I'm just curious as we kind of wind down here. I don't know, what motivated you to take your CSP? Because it seems to me like high performers in the speaking space
Mhm.
typically have that CSP. Talk about that for a second.
So CSP is a designation through National Speakers Association. I kind of equate it to like, if you're an accountant, and you have a CPA, it's kind of like that. Like it's
Okay.
proving that you kind of know your stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken Strength Finders?
Yes, I have. Yes.
So you're
Yes.
familiar. When I
Yes.
first take it, you can take it multiple times, but they say the first time you ever take it, that's your truest read. Number one for me was Achiever.
Ooh.
And I have always been that person who likes to have classes and workshops and certifications and degrees. It's part of why I went back to get my MBA as well. I knew I wanted to do that in high school. Like, who does that? So I always knew I wanted to do it just for me, honestly, for me more than anything else. But I do think that the CSP certification also shows that I take this job very seriously,
Mm.
that I have clients who believe in me because I had to
Yeah.
have 20 clients give me good reviews in the span of 5 business days, I think, or five
Mm.
days total. I had to have people who currently hold this designation watch a video of me and say, yes, she passes the test. So it hopefully gives my clients and future clients the confidence they would need to say, yes, I can hire Courtney and feel good about it too.
I love that. I just pulled up my Strength Finders. Positivity is my
Oh,
number
no
one.
way, Bruce. No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, positivity. I love this. This has been so much fun. I have enjoyed this so much. I'm gonna put some links in the show notes for some of the things that we talked about. I want to move to it's time to accelerate as we kind of wind down the show
Okay.
here. First, in question I always like to ask is what it seems to me that leaders are readers, and I was curious. Do you have any like favorite books that you've read that's helped you along the way?
Oh gosh, there's so many. But the number one that I always go back to is called Fierce Conversations,
Mm.
and it's by Susan Scott. It was the first one I read about why conversations are so critical. And it really got me going on the topic that I'm so passionate about now, which is how to have those tough conversations.
I
I
will
highly
tell
recommend
you,
it.
I had somebody on the podcast early season one, and they told me, they said, we have a saying around here, it's easy and it's hard. And when I think about tough conversations, I think it's really easy. Just go face it head on, but it's so
It's so
hard
hard.
to do. And so I'm so glad that you are helping people in that area because that's a much needed area. So thank you for doing that. And if you need some help there, Courtney is your girl. Hey, what do you here in my book, Life and Leadership Lane, I have a
Mhm.
chapter. It's called Great Leaders Are Grateful Leaders. What are you
Mm.
most grateful for?
The three F's: faith, family,
Hmm.
and friends.
I love that. Here we are. We're Q1. We have 2025 landing or a runway ahead. What are you like? What are you looking most forward to in the new year?
So, business wise, I'm looking forward to doing that keynote I was talking about for more
Yeah,
audiences. I'm actually revamping it and just trying to make it more fun and even more engaging than it
good.
currently is.
Okay.
And then I'm also looking forward to doing more true hypo leadership development programs.
Hmm.
I'm finding a lot of companies, especially smaller ones, who don't have the budget to have someone like me on staff full time, like when I was at JCPenney, right? They
Hmm.
need a leadership development program for their high potential or their future leaders. And I love partnering with companies to come in and instill that for them in a turnkey kind of way.
I love that. That is fantastic. So here's my last question, Courtney. Courtney, 10 years older. She's
Mm-hmm.
around the corner knocking at your door, and you're going to
Mm-hmm.
go answer that door. What's she going to tell you?
I think she would remind me, it goes
Mm.
back to that feedback thing. She would remind me that my worth is not tied to my performance.
Mm.
You are enough just the way you are. Whether someone says you have 100% of that room saying you were amazing on stage, or you
Mm.
had 95%, or if you had 20%, it doesn't devalue your worth because you are enough.
I love that. It doesn't define you at all. That is a wise 10 years older Courtney Ramsey. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today and sharing perspective. If someone heard something you shared today, or they want to follow you, or they want to connect with you, what is
Mhm.
the best way for them to connect, Courtney?
Find me on my website, CourtneyRamseySpeaks.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn too. If you were to put Courtney Ramsey speaker in Google, I should show up pretty quickly. So you can find me in any of those ways. And it's Ramsey with an E, not an A. And one
Awesome.
more plug, I will say speaker.org is the NSA North Texas website.
I love that. And I'll put that again in the show notes. And if you reach out to Courtney and connect with her on LinkedIn, be sure and let her know you heard her on Life and Leadership Lane. That makes that connection so much easier and quicker. And so, again, I appreciate you. I cannot wait to watch your road ahead, all the goodness ahead of you. Thank you for leading NSA North Texas.
Thank
And
you.
most importantly, thank you for your friendship.
Thank you. Same here, Bruce. And
Awesome.